I'm Ray McCormick from the Vincennes area. I farm in southwestern Indiana, southeastern Illinois. I own and farm about 4,000 acres. About 2,000 acres is forest land and wetlands. About 2,200 acres is cropland. On 100% of that cropland, I never till. So it's not no-till, it's never-till. That term no-till is kicked around and used, but to sequester carbon and keep it in the soil, you must never till. And never till means not disturbing that soil and busting the carbon, the soil organic carbon, into the atmosphere. It's like shaking up a champagne bottle and releasing the carbon. And this is easily measured and well documented. So agriculture is a big contributor to carbon dioxide. But in the video that you should all watch, the soil carbon sponge, a professor goes through the mathematics that if the world is not to go beyond the tipping point on climate change, the soil carbon sponge, and that's what we're talking about here, is the only way by which we can get the CO2 out of the atmosphere. The carbon came from the soil. It has to go back into the soil to save ourselves. How do you do that in agriculture? You follow the soil health practices that Indiana is already leading the nation in. Indiana has partnerships and farmers that are far ahead of Illinois, Iowa, and any other state on implementing these soil health practices. Part of that is the use of cover crops, because we only sequester carbon through photosynthesis with corn and soybeans for about 3 months a year. But with cover crops, especially in southern Indiana where I'm at, it's a year-round sequestration of carbon. Mike Plummer from the Extension Agency in Illinois near Carbondale did long-term studies, the only long-term studies that were ever done of carbon sequestration using cover crops, and he showed that the amount of carbon sequestered using annual ryegrass far exceeded any predictions of how much carbon farmers could sequester. On my own farm, I put cover crops on every acre. This afternoon, I'll be heading home to get on a combine that has its third air seeder on it. It's a $13,000 investment. I will be blowing on cover crops under the head of the combine so that I can get them started as quickly as possible and get a lot of growth, a lot of carbon sequestration. In the soil health movement, we've called this sequestering carbon to grow better crops through healthy soils. So if we want to increase yields, if we want to feed 9 billion people, it's essential that we put the carbon in the soil. But the carbon just doesn't lay there. It's quickly converted to biological life, and that biological life feeds the roots of corn and soybeans and pastures and forests. So using these soil health practices that Indiana leads in, we can sequester the carbon and put it to work growing more food and fiber and fuel that's going to be needed for the 9 billion people on this earth. But if you give farmers this incentive, which will be greater than I think what you're calculating, they're such great innovators that they'll find ways to sequester more and more carbon. One example will be on my farm right now. I had 5 different areas where I'm growing corn 60-inch rows, not 30-inch rows. So they're 5 foot apart. So the corn is bathed in sunshine. We planted at 64,000 in the row, and currently the cover crops are growing in abundance between the rows because we planted the cover crop at the same time we planted the corn. So this is an innovative way in which you sequester carbon the year round. We don't know yet just how much carbon these farmers can sequester, but we do know that every Hoosier farmer is looking for a way for additional income, and what could be a better way to reward those farmers than putting them in the role of saving our planet by sequestering all this carbon dioxide that is in the atmosphere free for the taking to grow better crops. Thank you. Is there any questions?
Okay, thank you, Ray. A question from committee? Okay, thank you.